Awesome. Well, officially, thank you, everybody. Good afternoon or good evening, and welcome to today's virtual Cafecito lecture. And this one is, part of the Honrando Nuestra Historia series of events, which has been celebrated starting September 15 and goes all the way through mid-October. I hope you're all having a great week and you have your cup of coffee or tea ready to enjoy this session with us. As you may know, my name is Natalie de la Torre Salas, and I am the public archaeologist for the Florida Public Archaeology Network Southwest region. We're very excited to continue this series with a powerful and incredible conversation on Miami's history. Today's Cafecito is titled Territory or Territorio, a journey of identity, with the one and only Ana Maria Rodriguez. Ana is a graphic designer by day and a devoted artist by night. She made the journey from Colombia to Miami 29, almost 30 years ago, and has since grown to love Miami as her home. With over 2 decades of experience in the broadcast industry, particularly in the news sector, she has developed a keen interest in current events and an understanding of the influence history has in our modern world. Ana's passion for art and history has led her on a journey of artistic exploration. She embarked on a project aiming to find a common language to define her community's identity, starting with its history. Her artistic mission is to engage her community in discussions about the ever-evolving city of Miami, providing an open table to address important topics. Ana also strives to craft memorable images that resonate with people, delivering a message that sticks with them. So before we begin, I want to thank Ana so much for being with us today and for sharing all of this fascinating and unique. After the presentation, we will be opening the floor for a Q&A session. You are then welcome to unmute yourself to ask questions or drop them in the chat, and we will definitely make sure all of your questions get answered. So for the time being, please stay muted. Make sure that you hit that mute button and avoid talking during the presentation. And now, without further ado, I'll pass it over to Ana. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Natalie. And I am so grateful to be here. I am so excited to talk to people about this project. I will start by telling you a little bit about myself, even though Natalie just read my bio. I just want to tell you who I think that I am from my perspective. And the first thing that jumps to mind, and that is completely the most important thing about myself, is that I'm an immigrant. I'm an immigrant, in that experience of being an immigrant has really informed the way that I see the world. And as an artist, my creations have a lot to do with this point of view that helps me understand my environment and inspires me to go explore outside my world and see how I can transform that into illustration pieces. So, because as an artist, I cultivate curiosity, I am a very passionate explorer of cultural experiences. And that is something that I do on a weekly basis in Miami, that is ever evolving and that is growing into a very cultural city these days. I've been here for 30 years and the city is really coming into its own now. And the reason why I do this on a regular basis is because as an artist, I need to consume an immense amount of information in order to create art. But my trade, the way that I make a living is by being a broadcast designer. That is a motion graphics designer and animator for the news industry. I've been working for the Univision network for the length of my career. I mean, I've been working for different networks and different local stations. I've worked for Univision for the last 10 years, but I've been working in the broadcast industry for the last 23 years. So half my life. Most importantly, I'm a member of this community, the Miami community. And I think that it's important to highlight that I'm not a scholar, I'm not a historian, I'm just a Miami lover. I'm someone that's very interested in our community and our history. And there are reasons why I I have this very specific interest in my art, and I will talk about this. So let me, oh, hold on one second. For some reason, I have to click like this instead. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you today about a project that I've been working on, and at the heart of this project is the city of Miami. In the time that I've lived here, this city has changed a lot. The city is always changing. From the beginning, it seems like it's always been a hotspot for tourists, but for locals, the experience of living here has changed over time. So I say that I'm a lover of Miami, but this picture doesn't really show it because this is me when I first arrived to Miami with a really sad face. I really didn't like the city when I came here. I was very confused by the way that it felt. First of all, the heat. I grew up in a mountain with cold weather, nice weather year around, and it really made me question, like, who the hell thought of building a city in a swamp? This is ridiculous. I didn't understand why it was so difficult to access different areas of the city. Public transportation wasn't like available to me like I was used to. And I really felt like a fish out of water living in this city because it's a beautiful city. Miami have undeniable natural beauty, essentially, but it felt like a really big, small town. And I didn't understand it at all. So I have this custom that when I meet someone, I always want to know about their history. I want to know how they came to be who they are the person that it's in front of me. And I think I did the same when I came and I was so confused about the city. I wanted to know about its history. I wanted to know about its past. So I went to the library and I started researching who were the people that came here first, who lived here before colonization, who helped to develop its modern way of being. And what I learned by reading about this story of Miami was fascinating because it helped me connect my own experiences to the stories that I was reading in the books. And this was important to me because it was the way that I started to connect to the city that I was now calling my home. And this takes me to why I care, why I care about this subject, why I care about history. And it is because when I came here as an immigrant, there were very important pressing issues that I needed to take care of, like finding a job and figuring out how I was going to finish school and all of this. But also, one of the things that kept resonating in my head was, if there's a city that has people from so many different cultures, how do you make it one so you can start getting to know people and connecting with people so you can foster meaningful relationships? Because at the end, that is also part of that of life, and it was as important as earning a living. So I started exploring historical sites and getting to know this building and trying to learn about the people that were connected to these sites. Miami has a very interesting way of being the same way from the very beginning. It's always been a transient city. It's been a port city from the beginning. And it was interesting to understand that some of the things that I saw about the city were always there from the beginning. It's like things were part of Miami's DNA from the very beginning. And that's why I wanted to show you this picture, which is a picture of the Royal Palm Hotel. It was a building that, a hotel that Henry Flagler built in Miami as soon as he arrived here. And it really shows what I mean about how the city has always been the same way, because he came with his railroad to start the city. And in 1895, Miami was just a small settlement of about 100 permanent residents. But when he came with his railroad, his workers that he attracted to not only build the railroad, but also this humongous hotel, were the ones that helped incorporate the city. So an interesting fact that I found learning about this particular time was that the city needed a minimum of 300 votes to incorporate the city, and 162 of those votes were of Black men that worked for Henry Flagler. And these people were immediately segregated to an area called Colortown, which is known now as Overtown, which is a neighborhood here in downtown Miami. And I thought that was an interesting fact, that half the voters were Black men, because women couldn't vote at the time. But this picture really shows, I mean, imagine, it was a small settlement of a few hundred people, and this humongous luxury hotel. I mean, it really sounds familiar. I mean, Miami has always been a playground for the wealthy. It was targeted to bring the super rich from all parts of the United States at the time to go play here and enjoy our beautiful weather during the winter. So I'm going to talk to you about the general project that I'm developing. I'm calling it Territorio, A Journey of Identity, because yes, I'm talking about identity, but I'm choosing the name territory because it represents two different concepts. It represents a territory could be a physical area, like the city of Miami, Miami-Dade County, the state of Florida, but it could also entail the concept of invisible boundaries. So how people create areas based on cultural identity. So in Miami, I like to call these areas Miami ghettos, because these are areas where people from certain nationalities establish themselves, and they stay in this area and they try to recreate an environment similar to where they came from, which is understandable because you always want to feel more comfortable being surrounded by something that is more familiar to you. But I find that that is sometimes a disadvantage when it inspires you to be more connected to the place that you left than to the place where you are now. And that creates certain problems in how you cannot start creating a sense of belonging on the new territory that you're living in. And that also takes to you not maybe engaging in a civil matter with the city because you just don't care what's happening in the place that you're living in, which is, in my point of view, a mistake when you're raising your family here. So if you're not paying attention to what's happening here, other people will choose for you. So I'm essentially talking about identity. So the process of discovering who you are when you talk about identity, it's essentially indicates that process of self-discovery is not a static state. It's something that is constantly changing. You're asking questions about yourself, you're redefining aspects of yourself, and all of this is connected to your memories, your values, your relationships, your beliefs, your experiences, etc. So I believe that for communities, when they create their own identity, a similar process happens. It's alive, it's not really static, it's always moving. And generally communities generate this type of identity organically, but I believe that Miami is a special case because the city is always changing, it's constantly changing rapidly. So this makes for making adaptation a challenge. So newcomers, immigrants, people that come here to stay have very little time to adjust before the environment shifts again. And that makes it more difficult for them to really connect with the city. So I posed a question in this project. What does it mean to be a Miamian? I mean, we can perhaps describe people from other areas like New York or Boston, and we can have an idea in our heads of what they're like. But with Miami, it doesn't seem to be that established. And I think that's because the city is just very young and we're still in that process of defining who we are. And I find that to be an excellent opportunity to be part of what the city could be. if we are more intentional about thinking about what it means to be us and to live in this area. And this is not to control it really, but in the hopes of fostering a sense of identity, because I think that defining our identity is key to building a sense of community beyond simply coexisting. The story we tell about ourselves gives us a structure that gives our lives meaning and sense of direction in a way. Without it, we only go to work to produce or have free time to consume. And what else there is, you know? So how I'm doing this is I'm developing certain illustration pieces that will help people navigate the cultural net of the city. And that is my hope, that they will use these pieces to explore the city and learn about its history. So the first piece that I developed was a map of 6 historical spots in an area that first is the area where Miami began. And second is an area where you can walk, bike, or take public transportation. And I did this intentionally because I think that when you're walking in the city, first of all, it's not something that we do a lot here in Miami because accessibility is a problem. But in this area, you can do so. And I think that taking on a city in this way helps you understand its essence. You can see the people living their daily lives, and you can stop at a ventanita and have a cafecito and really experience the city more. So essentially with this piece, what I'm trying to do is invite people to be a tourist in their own town. So the piece is a pamphlet. It's a brochure similar to those that you would probably find at visitor centers. And it has the map of this area of Miami. And on the other side, you have 6 illustrations that talk about the historical place, the people connected to these places, and how all of this is connected to us. So, let me see. So I'm gonna start talking a little bit about the process of creating this illustration piece. Obviously, I needed to start with its history because I needed to explore how the diverse cultural backgrounds merge and intertwine within this particular territory. In that way, we could start defining what are the personality traits that we have as Miamians. So basically, in the topic of identity, I'm using history as a route, and then I'm using illustration as a tool to describe these stories. The first thing that I did to choose these places was define the subject. And to look at history, it's sometimes complicated because when you start researching and reading about it, you become conscious of biases, right? So history always has the perspectives of those recounting the events. And I really try to be really conscious of that when doing this research, because not all voices are represented in history books. And me being a woman of color, I knew that how that works generally, you know? So I not only went to the library and did research and tried my best to find good sources that will help me understand the context that was in place when these places were built, because political and social influences will have an underlying story to tell about these specific places. So I chose these 6 places: the Miami Circle, the Wagner House, which is the oldest house in Miami, the Florida East Coast Railway, which is the railway that Henry Flagler brought to basically start the city, Vizcaya, Museum and Gardens, the Freedom Tower, and Fort Dallas. Fort Dallas is a very interesting building that very few people that I've met in Miami know about. That one and Wagner House. Even the Freedom Tower or Vizcaya, they know they exist or they've seen them, they've passed by them, but they haven't never been inside. And I really like with this piece to encourage people to get to know these places because the history is really rich and it has a lot of connections to the life in today Miami, actually. Fort Dallas is one of the most interesting because that was the first building that was built in modern Miami. And it was built to be a slave house first, and then a military fort during the Seminole Wars. So after I decided my subjects, I wanted to start evaluating my sources and trying to understand more specifically for each building what was the context that was happening at the time. So if I was going to talk about Henry Flagler, then what was happening politically at the time, what was his history, his personal history. He was actually I found out, I didn't know he was one of the founders of Standard Oil, one of the first monopolies in the world, together with Rockefeller. And that's why I chose the Monopoly game as an image to start illustrating and telling the story of the Florida East Railway. The Monopoly game was designed by a woman. I don't know if anybody knew that. Her name was Elizabeth Maggie. Her patent was stolen by a man. I have to say that. But then this very popular game was designed to explain the principles of capitalism. And that's pretty much what I'm trying to explain here. I'm using a literary device to make a comparison between the times where Henry Flagler built the railroad and today's times. So when we talk about capitalism, which is, times change, but capitalism is forever, the system is still in place. If we look closer to the conditions where he built his railroad, he used something that was called convict leasing that was passed at the time. I think the date was 1875. It was made legal in Florida. And convict leasing was a system that pretty much perpetrated slavery. After the 13th Amendment was signed, there was an exclusion for people that were in prison. So basically, this system that really contribute to the financial success of many businesses in Florida because it provided cheap labor. It was a way to re-enslaving people. And they had to work in terrible conditions. Many times they were chained together to each other while they were digging ditches or building railroads like this. So this was a reality during Henry Flagler's time. And the point that I'm trying to make with this illustration is that it's easy to look back to the past in judgment. And we should highlight these realities that happen that are not, sometimes they're not told and people don't know about. They just look at this man that was like a rich man that brought so much progress to the area and all of that, which is true. But he also used convict leasing. And going beyond that, yes, he did that. But what about today's version of capitalism? Today's world is filled with electric cars and mobile devices. And if we look closer at that industry in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, with the cobalt mines people are working in terrible conditions. I really recommend this book by Siddhartha Kara, Cobalt Red, that it tells the story and accounts for all the conditions in the mines in the Congo. Half of the workforce are children that work pretty much digging by hand or with very rudimental tools because of this rare mineral that is powering the mobile revolution. So it's used to make lithium batteries, and the end product, you can find that everywhere. I mean, we use it now. So I pose that question. What are we justifying these days for the sake of progress? And are we really that different from the pioneer times? So what I'm doing with all of these illustrations is not only talking about the historical spot and the people connected to the spot, but also I'm trying to describe a personality trait, a Miami personality trait. So if we think about the Miami Circle, one of the most important archaeological sites that we have, um, it's a place at the mouth of the Miami River that very little people understand. People don't know what it is, even if they read the faded sign next to the circle. They don't really feel connected to it because those are not our ancestors. We don't care. And that's why I designed that illustration as me imagining this very sacred place at the time of the Tequestas. But in today's time, people just take their dog to pee because I don't care if it's an archaeological site. I don't know who the Tequestas are. I'm just very disconnected. So that site really describes how disconnected we feel here in Miami. And I do the same for each illustration. For the second one, it will be how resilient immigrants and pioneers are. And I tell a very very beautiful story there that I'll explain in detail further and I'll log in the chat. The Monopoly guy, I just thought it was so funny that the Monopoly guy looks exactly like Henry Flagler. I had to do Henry Flagler, the Monopoly guy, because they look alike. That describes how driven we are in Miami, but maybe perhaps at the expense of everything else. I also talk about how maybe shallow we could be, how concentrated we are, and how things look, and how we look, and how our lives look in social media. And I connect that with James Deering and his very lavish home of Vizcaya. That is, he really is like the one icon that we have from the Roaring 20s, with his lavish parties and all of that. And Miami really hasn't changed that much from those times. I talk about the Freedom Tower and how we live in denial because that area of the Freedom Tower, it's undergoing massive development. We're spending millions of dollars rebuilding and expanding one of the highways, and very little of that investment is being put into one of our most pressing problems, which is sea level rise. We suffer from that year around, and no one is paying attention to it. So in a way, we live in denial in Miami. And the last personality trait that I talk about is how hyperbolic we are. We have this idea and this global brand of sunny beaches and swaying palm trees, and I blame Julia Turrell for that. I mean, the story of Julia Turrell and the oranges, I don't know if people are familiar with it. They say, even though historians have said that that story wasn't true, even if it's folklore, it proves my point, which is that the story goes that she was trying to convince Harry Flagler for a long time to come to Miami to bring the railroad so she could start a city. But there was, and he wasn't paying attention to her, but there was a freeze in North Florida that devastated the citrus industry, and this affected Henry Flagler. So she decided to go out to her backyard and pick these oranges because she needed to demonstrate that in our subtropical weather, it's perpetual paradise. The sun is always shining here. We always have juicy oranges. Everything is perfect. And that's why in this illustration, I use sarcasm and I cannot blame her for all the housing bubbles that we have endured for decades in Miami. I'll tell you this story a little closer because it's my favorite story and the one that surprised me the most when I was doing this research. This house was built around 1855. I read a report that was commissioned by the Date Heritage Trust, which is the organization that is in charge of the preservation of this building. I couldn't believe when I went to this house, 1855. I mean, this is 40 years before the incorporation of Miami. There was nothing here. It was like going to the middle of the Everglades and saying, "Okay, I'm gonna build a house here." And I was like so curious, who thought, oh, it was a great idea to just come to the middle of nowhere and build a house? And that's why in the illustration I placed the house in Mars, because coming to South Florida was as hard as going to Mars these days. You know, if they imagine crossing the Everglades, you know, filled with alligators. It was impossible. So the journey to South Florida had to be done by ship. And ships also struggle and they sink often because of the conditions of the coastline and the storms and all of this. So it was a mission to get here. And I got so curious about why he did that. And then I learned that he was a veteran from the Mexican War in California, Mexican California. And he was injured and then stationed in South Carolina. And that's probably where he met this woman. And this woman, his then wife, was her name was Evelyn Amar. She was mixed race. She was Creole. And this is in the time of slavery in the South. So I tried to do a little more research on her because I was very curious. And I couldn't find anything specific on her, but I did learn that around the 1790s, there was an influx of free men and women that were mixed race coming from the islands through Charleston, South Carolina. So she probably was a descendant of these people that came to the newly established United States. But I thought that was fascinating. I mean, he came to the middle of nowhere because the Civil War was about to burst, and it was probably dangerous for them to stay in South Carolina. So he figured he would come and be with his Union friends at Fort Dallas. Actually, they were stationed there because of the Seminole Wars, and he came here to build a house so he could be with the love of his life. And when I read this story, I was so impressed and fascinated because that's my story. I mean, the people from my community, the LGBTQ plus community of my generation, did the same. We came to Miami so we could be free and love whoever we wanted. So I really love this connection. This one is my favorite because Miami's always been the place, it seems, where you can come and be whoever you want to be. So this map, this guide, I'm calling the Distinct Guide to Miami because the map is sort of like a metaphor. It's not meant to really show you the location of the place. You can Google that. It's an artistic piece that helps you understand that understanding where you are, it goes beyond location. It goes beyond geography. It has a lot to do with the mentality and the mindset of the people that you get to share your life with in the area that you choose to live. So it's important to me to make the point that if we make the effort to connect to these historic buildings, learn about the history, it will help us connect to the area, to the city, and start finding a sense of belonging here. Because the pioneers did it, the Tequesta did it. I mean, everyone found the way of building communities and facing the challenges that we're facing now. So that really inspires me to encourage everyone to find suitable solutions to the problems that we face nowadays. And I think this subject is very important because the history of Miami is tied to the hopes and dreams of so many cultures and so many generations of people that have called this place home. And my illustration pieces are an invitation to explore that. If you want to know more about this project, I encourage you to follow me on Instagram. You can check out my website. I've been also working on a project on a website that's specific to the project territory. That is not done, but I'm taking some drone footage to show people about these locations and the context where the locations are. So I invite everyone to follow me so you can, get the latest updates on the development of this project. You can also email me. You can contact me by phone. You can call me. You can reach me anyway, because I love to talk to Miamians. I really love talking to people that care about Florida and that are working in projects about Florida, because I'm always looking to collaborate. So feel free to contact me at any time. And also, I like to finish with an invitation, because the second navigation tool that I created, it's a map of Opa-locka. It's a historic map of Opa-locka. And we will be doing the unveiling of this project on November 1st in Opa-locka, in this historic center of the city. It will have, you will be able to walk the Heritage Trail. You will be able to see the beautifully curated museum, the historic museum that Alex Van Merkel designed and curated. And you'll be able to see the guide that we created to kind of do a rebranding of the city from the point of view of its history. And that's about it. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and listening to me ramble about my project. If anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Yes, thank you so much, Anna. I feel like I need to do a round of applause because that was incredible. So please join me, everyone, in the round of applause virtually, of course. I think this is one of the most exciting projects I've ever had the opportunity to learn about. And just the fact that you have brought forward something that is so incredibly important and that sometimes word just, can convey, but your project can do it. Like this art that you created works better than 1,000 words, I would say.
Thank you.
And that important.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that's one of the things that inspired me to work on this project, because one of the favorite things in Miami is to complain about Miami. Always complaining about the city. And I just wanted to contribute to something that will help Miamians to understand the city better. And where I grew up, art was the way to do just this. It was the tool that we use to talk about our problems and bring community together. So I figure, well, if no one's doing it, I'm going to start doing it. So I'll try it. So I'm very passionate about all of this. And like I said, I'm always looking for other people that are passionate about Miami or speaking about these subjects and collaborate, because, I don't know anything. I don't know. I'm just a street nerd. I like to call myself. I just talk to people on the street. I go to the library. But if I can collaborate with people that are like more versed in these subjects, I'm always open and super happy to do that.
That's awesome. And thank you so much then for doing that for not only people from Miami, but for all of us.